All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. We are on episode number 173 today. My name is DJ Ligori and hope everybody is off to a great week. Today, what I want to talk about is something that probably causes a lot of us stress, and it is trying to figure out what we can control in our lives. And I think a lot of the times we talk about how stress and anxiety is ultimately created because we try to control certain things that we really don't have control over. And I remember, actually, to be completely honest, every time I hear this saying, it kind of almost pisses me off because it's like, duh. It's like, how can I control something that I have no control over, right? Like, it just doesn't sometimes make sense in my head. And I think where the pain starts to arise, at least personally, is actually identifying if I do have control over the thing. Because if I do have control over the thing, then the next question is, well, what can I do then to alter the result that I'm going to get, right? Or relieve some of the pain that I might be in. And I think that's actually personally where I find the most amount of tension or the most amount of stress, is actually identifying if I do have control over it or not. And so one of my favorite books, Deliberate Discomfort, that I've talked a lot about on this show, had a great little breakdown of how to do a better job of identifying if you actually do have any amount of control over something. And they used a lot of their terminology from like a military perspective, because the book is written by Green Berets and Navy SEALs and Army Rangers. And so they used a lot of, hey, can I control this piece of the mission, or can I control this piece of the game plan, or this teammate or this team? And it applies essentially to anything that we think we might have control over, we think we might not have control over. And the way that they defined it was either having a grip or a gravity force. And a grip force is essentially something that you do have control over, meaning you can tighten your grip on it, you can loosen your grip on it. I mean, if you think about like a throttle on like a dirt bike, right? If you are gripping that, right, you can release your grip or you can tighten your grip, right? You have control over the bike based upon your grip, right? Now, a gravity force is a force that, if you think about gravity, we have no control over gravity, right? So these are things that we essentially have to let go, which can be difficult because that's where this tension kind of comes into my head, as I earlier explained. How do I know if I really don't have control over this thing? Because I'm a big believer of we have control over our attitude, our effort, and our behavior, and I can always put in more effort, right? I can always change my attitude. Right? I can always change the way I behave in a certain situation if I think it might have an impact on the result. Yet, how do I know if it's actually worth it? Right? How do I know if it's worth that effort? And so, alongside this grip versus gravity force, they also had this acronym called CIA. And it stands for, can I control it? Can I influence it? Or do I need to accept it? And for the first one, the C, can I control it? Right? This is where it's almost like the surface level. What's my first thought, right? My first thought about this scenario, do I think I have some control over this thing, right? And I think the majority of the time I kind of just go with my intuition, with what my gut is kind of telling me. And that is like the initial relievance, right? That's the initial, okay, all right, here's what I think I do have control over in this situation. And here's what I think I don't have control over in this situation. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm right. The second piece is, can I influence it, right? Where can I put some time, put some attention, put some effort to actually influence what the final result could be? Now, this is where you might actually find something that you can influence in that situation, or you might find nothing in that situation. And that's where you might be like, all right, I actually need to move on to A, right? Do I need to accept it? I don't think I have any more influence in this area that I can actually change the outcome that I have in this scenario, whatever it might be. All right, so the A is, do I need to accept it? And one of the things that we talk a lot about in mental fitness and when we utilize the positive intelligence program is there's this really cool exercise where you either convert or accept. And basically, using this framework of the CIA and using that A, do I need to accept it? A lot of the times, a scenario will happen and we'll try to figure out, all right, what do I have control over? Where can I influence? And we realize like we actually don't have a lot of control or a lot of influence, and that's where we might start to get stressed. And we have to then move into this accept piece. And in our mental fitness practice, we talk about either accepting it or converting it. And the acceptance piece is merely just accepting it for what it is, for face value. We've already established that we don't have any control over it, we don't have any influence it, and we merely just have to accept it. And I know if you're listening to this, that might be difficult and that might be hard. Yet there's a lot of things in our lives that we might just have to accept, right? It might just be, a higher power, right, created this piece in our lives. We might not have any meaning as to why this thing is in our life or why it happened. And I remember I made a podcast a little while ago that said, hey, sometimes things just don't make sense. And we just have to kind of accept that it just might not make sense in our head for the moment. And so we have that accept piece. And then we have this convert piece. And the convert piece is, how can I take this opportunity, this event, and convert it into a gift or an opportunity? And so then this is where you kind of take your focus from, all right, I don't have any influence over this thing. I don't have any control over this thing. I've already accepted it. Now, can I shift my energy somewhere else? Can I focus on something that might actually help me, that might actually give me a gift or give me an opportunity? Now, here's the thing, right? I've talked a lot about this where, right, this is not toxic positivity. This is working through the scenario and then getting to a point where you're then okay with converting it into a gift or an opportunity, because some events might take a lot of emotion, right? We are emotional beings. We might have to navigate through all of those feelings in order to get to that point where we actually can accept what we're actually presented with. All right. So this is something that I try to think about a lot now, especially the grip versus the gravity. And I don't know if it's just the alliteration of the two G's, but I've been thinking like, all right, is this grip or is this gravity, right? And then doing my best to kind of work through the CIA of, can I control it? Can I influence it? Do I need to accept it? To ultimately break down, at least in my head, to give myself more clarity if I actually can have any control over this event or over this result. All right. So I hope that breakdown might help you in your life with some of the things that you might be stumbling upon to figure out if you do have control over that thing or not. And using this framework of the grip or the gravity force, the CIA, can I control it? Can I influence it? Do I need to accept it? And if I want to accept it, there's also the opportunity of actually converting it into a gift or an opportunity once you're ready to do so. All right. So I hope that was helpful. And thank you guys so much, as always, for tuning into today's episode of the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. This is episode number 173. And we will talk to you guys soon. We'll see you.